Insects are the most successful group of animals, having more species than any others put together. Part of what makes them so successful is how evolution was able to play with their worm-like ancestors to shape them into what they are today. But how exactly did a worm become an insect? One of the amazing things about the proposed evolutionary path of insects is that each of the intermediate stages have modern animals that are probably similar to appearance to those ancient insects. This gives science a lot of unique glimpses into the behavior and morphology of these early ancestors. The earliest insects might have looked something similar to a segmented worm, much like the annelids that are still around today. Because of the similarity of these ancient worms to annelids, we can take the basic body plan of an annelid and apply this to the ancestors of the insects. For annelid worms, each segment is separated from the others by a thin membrane called a septum. A pair of nerve cords, a large blood vessel, and a gut are the only things that run through all the segments of the worm. Essentially, each segment is self-contained and will even have their own organs, such as excretory organs, that are not connected to the next segments. The nerve cords that run the length of the worm connect to ganglia in each segment. Ganglia are a mass of nerves that react to stimuli without communicating to the brain. It might seem weird to have a mini brain in various parts of your body making decisions without your brain, but you too have ganglia throughout your body. And this is part of the reason your reactions are so quick, for example when you jerk back after touching something hot. Some of these segmented worms started to develop 2 pairs of appendages for each segment. These appendages would have been simple, but would help the animals move through the water as they swam, similar to how polychaete worms use their appendages to swim through the water. Eventually, some of these polychaete-like ancestors began to move around on the ocean floor, using their appendages more like legs than paddles. While the legs grew more musculature, they were still basically just fleshy sacs, looking very similar to today's onychophorans or velvet worms. Eventually, to avoid predation, some of these ancestors started to develop a hardened cuticle made from chitin. The process of an animal's tissues becoming hard is known as sclerotization. As they developed this hardened cuticle, their sac-like legs would no longer have their full range of movement, being restricted to a peg leg-like movement. Instead of going full pirate, early insects developed joints of fleshy material between the sclerotized sections. This is usually a trade-off in evolution. The more protection you have, the more mobility you lose. Think of a tortoise or a snail. Amazing protection but low mobility. Arthropods found a way around this problem, and this solution is a major reason why they are so successful today. In fact, jointed legs are a defining character of all arthropods. An arthropod literally means joint foot. The ancestor of insects during this stage would be a creature that looked similar to that of a millipede, Myriapoda, a long, segmented worm-like body with a hardened exoskeleton and 2 pairs of jointed legs per segment. This is where evolution really took off, modifying this basic plan into the over 1 million described body plans we see in insects today. New arthropod groups came into being as segments started to lose their individuality, fusing into what is known as tagmata. Tagmosis is the fusion of multiple segments to specialize in a given process. For insects, the segments fused into 3 tagmata: the head, thorax, and abdomen, sometimes mistakenly called segments. However, the ancient segments can still be seen as segments within the tagmata. For example, the thorax of an insect is a group of 3 segments, the pro-, meso-, and metathoracic segments. These segments have specialized in locomotion, containing mostly muscles. In many cases, the original segments still contain their own ganglia, although they lose many of the other individual organs and structures. As segments became tagmata, legs could be dropped or developed to serve other functions. Insects are highly modified crustaceans, so we can use a crustacean leg, like this Anicepididae, to see what the ancestral state may have looked like on an ancient insect. First, let's look at the modifications that took place to make the typical insect leg. The diagram shown is labeled with the etymological names of the ancestral state of insects, but I included the names that carcinologists, those who study crustaceans, have given them in parentheses. For the insect leg to evolve, the endite lobes, shown in dark and light blue, shrunk along with one of the trochanters. The femur, tibia, and tarsi lengthened out, making it easier for them to walk on land. It is important to note that both the tarsus of the ancestral state and the current insect leg have many segments that are not shown here. And that's pretty much it for the insect leg. Now onto the evolution of the mouth parts, which is even more complicated and fun. The insect mouth has many movable parts, and each one probably came from legs. We will focus on two of these mouth parts, where it is easy to see where each part comes from, the labium and the maxillae. The maxillae are what insects use to chew their food. They also have palps to help them with food manipulation, similar to the way that we use our hands, but these palps also have sensory organs within that do something similar like smelling and tasting for us. The maxillae evolved from trochanter 2, stretching and smushing the endite lobes together. The endite lobes became harder and sharper, and they became the means of chewing food. Meanwhile, the femur and tibia became shorter as the tarsal segments became longer, so that the insect could use these to manipulate their food. Being on the end of the legs, the tarsal segments already were equipped with sensory structures, and so longer tarsi were selected for the palps over the femur and tibia. The second mouth part, the labium, is easily the most interesting. The labium is the backmost part of the insect mouth and helps hold food inside, somewhat like our lips. It too has palps, but these are mainly used for manipulation of food, rather than sensory structures. Interestingly, the labium evolved from the coccipodites, shown in purple, of two different legs coming together and fusing to form one large plate. Both trochanters also fuse together, and in many chewing insects you can still see the gap where the trochanters have not entirely fused. The endite lobes became sensory structures that could taste similar to our tongue. Because of this, sensory structures on the palps were not as important, and so the tarsal segments could be reduced to one tarsal segment, and it is of similar size to the femur and tibia. These are just a few examples of what the insects have used the extra body segments and legs for in their evolution. Other structures that come from legs could include other mouth parts we did not cover, the reproductive system, gill structures on some larval forms, and though it is heavily debated, their wings. Of course, evolution didn't stop there, and continued to play with these now basic insect parts. Certain orders, families, and even species lost or changed all of these parts over and over and over again. And I promise that we will talk about all these crazy modifications in later videos. It is very important to know that what became what is hotly debated. I went with the most widely accepted model, and what makes the most sense to me. But by the time this video is actually out there could be more information that changes the way we currently see insect evolution. Despite this, all entomologists agree that this evolution, from annelid worm to legged soft-body velvet worms to the jointed hardened legs of crustaceans, is what made insects the most successful animals this planet has ever seen. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more big facts about little bugs, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing. Papers I used are in the description, and you can visit us at our website at bigfactslittlebugs.wixsite.com. Thank you so much, and keep looking for those little bugs.